At my son's wedding, his bride said, "Starting tomorrow, you're no longer part of this family. Now I'm the most important person in his life." I just smiled and canceled the check for $80,000. In the morning, she burst into my house and, "I'm glad you're here with me." Please like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I never thought my son Michael's wedding day would become the day I'd have to protect everything I'd built. For 30 years, I'd run a successful accounting firm in Portland, raised Michael alone after his father passed, and saved every penny I could for his future. The $80,000 check I'd written as a wedding gift wasn't just money. It was supposed to be the down payment on their first house, a foundation for their life together. The warning signs started 6 months before the wedding. Michael had always been open with me, sharing his dreams and concerns over our Sunday morning coffee ritual. But after he met Jessica at a corporate retreat, something shifted. Our weekly calls became bi-weekly, then monthly. When I'd ask about wedding plans, he'd say, "Jessica's handling everything, Mom. She's got it under control." I met Jessica 3 times before the wedding. Each meeting left me with an uncomfortable feeling I couldn't quite name. At our first dinner, she'd interrupted Michael constantly, correcting his stories, speaking over him when he tried to share memories of his childhood. "That's not how successful people talk about their past," she'd said with a tight smile. "We need to focus on the future." The second meeting was worse. I'd invited them to my house for Thanksgiving. Jessica arrived 2 hours late, blamed traffic, then spent the entire meal on her phone. When I gently asked her to put it away, she'd laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "I'm networking, Margaret. Some of us have to work for our money." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Michael had looked down at his plate, silent, but I'd pushed my concerns aside. Michael was 42 years old, successful in his own right as a software engineer. He deserved happiness. Maybe I was being an overprotective mother. Maybe Jessica was just nervous, trying too hard to impress. Wasn't that possible? The third meeting came 2 weeks before the wedding, at the final dress fitting. Jessica's mother was there, a woman who examined me from head to toe and seemed to find me wanting. "So, you're the famous Margaret," she'd said, not warmly. "Jessica tells me you've been quite involved in the wedding planning." "I've offered help," I'd replied carefully. "But Jessica seems to have everything under control." "Yes." Jessica had emerged from the dressing room in her gown, looking beautiful and somehow cold. "We appreciate your financial contribution, Margaret. That's where your involvement should stay." My hands had trembled as I'd written that $80,000 check later that week. Michael had hugged me tight, whispering, "Thank you, Mom. This means everything." But Jessica had simply taken the check, glanced at the amount, and said, "It's a good start." A good start? I'd nearly said something then. But Michael's grateful eyes had stopped me. The wedding itself was beautiful, expensive, elegant, full of Jessica's corporate friends and her family's social circle. I sat in the front row, watching my son promise his life to this woman, and tried to silence the voice in my head, screaming that something was wrong. The reception was held at the Portland Art Museum, champagne flowing freely, a string quartet playing. I'd given my mother of the groom speech, keeping it short and warm, welcoming Jessica to our family. She'd smiled at the crowd, not at me. Then came the moment that changed everything. I was standing near the gift table, talking with my sister Patricia, when Jessica approached with 3 of her bridesmaids. She'd had several glasses of champagne. I could tell by the flush in her cheeks, the looseness of her posture. Michael was across the room laughing with his college friends. "Margaret," Jessica said, loud enough that nearby conversations stopped. "I need to make something clear to you." I turned, confused. "Is everything all right?" "Starting tomorrow, you need to understand something." Her eyes were hard, triumphant. You're no longer part of this family. Not really. Michael has a new family now. I'm the most important person in his life. I'm the one who makes decisions. I'm the one who matters. The room had gone silent. People were staring. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Jessica. No. She held up her hand. This is my day, my marriage, my life with Michael. You had your turn raising him. Now step back and let me have mine. Is that clear? Was that clear? Oh, yes. Perfectly, devastatingly clear. I smiled. A small, calm smile that didn't reach my eyes. Absolutely clear, Jessica. Then I walked directly to the table where I'd left my purse, pulled out my phone, and opened my banking app. My fingers didn't shake as I canceled the $80,000 check. The transaction reversed in seconds. What would happen next? I didn't know. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I'd just declared war. I left the reception without saying goodbye to anyone except Patricia, who'd witnessed the entire scene. Her hand caught my arm in the parking lot. Margaret, what are you going to do? I don't know yet, I'd said. But I'm not going to let her erase me from my son's life. That night, I sat in my home office, the same office where I'd built my accounting firm from nothing, where I'd worked late nights to pay for Michael's college, where I'd planned every financial decision for 30 years. Now I needed to plan something different. A defense. No, more than that. A strategy. I made coffee at midnight and started writing. Not emotionally, not angrily, methodically. What did I know? What did I suspect? What could I prove? Known facts. Jessica had isolated Michael from me over 6 months. She'd made a public declaration of erasing me from the family. The $80,000 check was now canceled. Michael hadn't defended me at the reception. He might not have even heard what happened. Suspicions. Jessica wanted control of Michael's finances. She'd targeted him specifically, a successful man with a wealthy mother. This wasn't about love, it was about money and status. But suspicions weren't proof. And I'd learned in business that you never make a move without solid evidence. The fear hit me around 3 a.m. What if I was wrong? What if Jessica had just been drunk, nervous, saying things she didn't mean? What if I pushed too hard and Michael chose her over me? I could lose my son forever. I sat with that fear for an hour, let it wash over me. Then I picked up a photo from my desk, Michael at 8 years old, gap-toothed and grinning, holding the trophy he'd won at the science fair. I'd been there. I'd always been there. And I'd be damned if I'd let someone erase that without a fight. By dawn, I had the beginning of a plan. First, information. I needed to understand who Jessica really was. I called Patricia at 7 a.m. I need your help. Discreetly. Patricia had been a paralegal for 25 years before retiring. She knew how to find information. What are we looking for? Everything. Jessica's employment history, her finances, any public records. I need to know if there's a pattern. You think she's done this before? I think she's too comfortable with cruelty to be a beginner. While Patricia started her research, I focused on protecting my assets. At 9 a.m. Monday morning, I walked into my attorney's office. Robert Chen had handled my business affairs for 15 years. He knew me well enough to read my expression. Margaret, what happened? I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, his fingers steepled under his chin. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. You canceled the check? Yes. Good. That was legally yours to give or not give. But I assume you're here because you're worried about more than just that money. I need to protect everything else. If she convinces Michael to sue me for the money, if she tries to claim I promised it irrevocably, if she… Stop. Robert held up his hand. Let's think clearly. First, do you have any written agreements about this money? No, it was a gift. Perfect. A gift can be revoked before it's accepted and cashed. You're protected legally. But Margaret, he paused. This isn't really about the law, is it? No, it wasn't. It was about my son. It was about not losing him to someone who saw him as a resource to exploit. I need you to do something else, I said. I need you to review all my estate documents. My will, my trusts, everything. I want to make sure that if something happens to me, Jessica can't access anything meant for Michael until certain conditions are met. Robert made notes. What kind of conditions? I don't know yet, but I won't let her inherit control of money I spent 30 years earning. As I left his office, my phone rang. Michael. My heart jumped. Mom? His voice sounded strained. We need to talk. Jessica told me what you did with the check. I'm sure she has her version of events, I said carefully. Would you like to hear mine? Can you come to our apartment tonight? Around 7? Our apartment. Already our, not my. How fast she'd worked. I'll be there, I said. I had 9 hours to prepare. 9 hours to decide how much truth to tell my son. Because I was beginning to realize something terrible. Jessica hadn't just married Michael. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer, and I was only just beginning to understand how deep this went. I arrived at Michael's apartment at exactly 7 o'clock. The building was in the Pearl District, expensive, modern, everything Jessica would want. I'd helped Michael with the deposit 2 years ago, back when he'd lived alone, back when our relationship had been simple and honest. Jessica answered the door. No smile, no pretense of warmth. Margaret, come in. The apartment had changed. Michael's comfortable, lived-in furniture had been replaced with sleek designer pieces. His collection of vintage science fiction books was gone from the shelves. Even the photos, pictures of us, of his childhood, of his father, had disappeared. Where's Michael? I asked. Getting us wine. Sit down. It wasn't an invitation. It was a command. I remained standing. I'd prefer to wait for my son. Something flickered in Jessica's eyes. Surprise, maybe, that I wasn't immediately complying. Before she could respond, Michael emerged from the kitchen carrying 3 glasses. He looked exhausted. There were shadows under his eyes I hadn't noticed at the wedding. When had he started looking so tired? Mom. He set down the glasses and hugged me, but it was brief, almost formal. Thanks for coming. We sat. Michael and Jessica together on the couch, me across from them in an angular chair that was as uncomfortable as it looked. The positioning wasn't accidental. Mom, Jessica told me you canceled the wedding check. That's correct. But why? Michael's voice cracked slightly. We were counting on that money. We've already made an offer on a house. The down payment is due in 2 weeks. Michael, did Jessica tell you what happened at the reception? What she said to me? Jessica spoke before he could answer. I was celebrating, Margaret. I may have been a bit too honest about setting boundaries, but, quote, boundaries? My voice stayed level, controlled. You told me I was no longer part of this family. You told me I didn't matter. In front of 50 people. Michael looked at Jessica, confused. You said that? I said we needed to establish our own family unit, Jessica said smoothly. That's healthy. That's what marriage counselors recommend. Don't. I held up my hand. Don't rewrite what happened. Michael, your wife told me, publicly, that I was no longer welcome in your life. That starting the next day, I meant nothing. Those were her words. Michael's face had gone pale. Jessica, your mother is exaggerating. Am I? I pulled out my phone. Because Patricia recorded it. Would you like to hear? I hadn't asked Patricia to record anything, but Jessica didn't know that, and the flash of panic in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. That's That's illegal, Jessica stammered. You can't record people without consent in Oregon. Actually, Oregon is a one-party consent state, I said calmly. But that's beside the point. The point is that you showed your true self at that reception, Jessica, and I responded appropriately by revoking a gift I had every legal right to revoke. Michael stood up. Mom, even if Jessica said something she shouldn't have, canceling that check puts us in a terrible position. We'll lose the house. We'll lose the deposit we already put down. How much was the deposit? I asked. $5,000. And where did that money come from? Michael hesitated. My savings. Your savings. Not joint money. Not Jessica's money. Yours. I looked at Jessica. Interesting. So you're using his money for deposits but expecting my money for the down payment. Tell me, Jessica, what exactly are you contributing financially to this marriage? Her face flushed. That's none of your business. Mom, Michael said, his voice strained. This isn't fair. Jessica and I are a team. Are you? I turned to him. Michael, honey, I need you to really think about something. When was the last time you made a decision without Jessica's input? That's what marriage is, he said. But he sounded uncertain. No. Marriage is partnership. What I'm seeing is control. I stood up. I came here tonight to talk to you, Michael, to explain my side. But I'm realizing something. You can't hear me. Not yet. Not while she's sitting right there managing your responses. That's absurd, Jessica snapped. Michael, tell her… Stop. Michael's voice was quiet but firm. He looked at Jessica, then at me. Just… everyone stop. The silence stretched out. I could see my son thinking, processing. This was the moment. Would he defend her automatically, or would doubt begin to take root? Finally, Michael spoke. Mom, I need some time to think about this. Can you give me a few days? It wasn't the breakthrough I'd hoped for, but it wasn't complete rejection either. Of course, I said. But Michael, while you're thinking, I want you to check something. Look at your bank accounts. Look at what's been spent since you got engaged. Look at who's been making the financial decisions. Just look. I left before Jessica could stop me from planting that seed. As I drove home, Patricia called. Margaret, I found something. You need to hear this. What is it? Jessica's employment history. She's had 6 jobs in 4 years. Each time, she left right after being questioned about expense account discrepancies. No charges were ever filed, but there's a pattern. And Margaret? 2 of those jobs were at companies where she met men, successful men who she dated, who she got engaged to. Michael is her 3rd engagement in 5 years. The other 2 broke up with her before the weddings. Both men have restraining orders against her. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. There it was, the proof, the pattern. Jessica wasn't just controlling. She was a predator. The next morning, I sat in Robert Chen's office with Patricia beside me and a folder of documents spread across his desk. Patricia had worked through the night, compiling everything she'd found on Jessica Morrison, or rather Jessica Morrison Thompson Rodriguez, depending on which year you looked. 3 different last names, Robert said, reviewing the papers. 2 broken engagements. 5 complaints from employers, all settled quietly. And this, he held up a screenshot. A small claims court judgment from 2019. A former boyfriend sued her for $15,000 she'd borrowed and never repaid. Can we use this? I asked. Use it how? Margaret, legally, there's nothing here that prevents her from being married to Michael. And if you try to show him this, she'll spin it as you trying to destroy his marriage. He was right. I knew he was right. But knowing and accepting were different things. What if we approach it differently? Patricia suggested. What if we don't tell Michael directly? What if we make sure he discovers it himself? I looked at her. How? The restraining orders are public record. So is the small claims judgment. What if someone at Michael's work just happened to run a routine background check? What if someone just happened to mention they saw something concerning? That's manipulative, Robert said. So is what Jessica's doing, I replied. But Patricia's right. If I tell him directly, he won't believe me. He needs to find out on his own. Robert closed the folder. I can't advise you to do this, but I can't stop you either. Just be careful, Margaret. If Jessica figures out you're investigating her, she'll escalate. Let her, I said. I was wrong. I should have been more afraid. 2 days later, at 6 a.m., someone started pounding on my front door. I stumbled downstairs in my robe, looked through the peephole, and saw Jessica. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared. She looked unhinged. Open this door, Margaret. I know what you're doing. I didn't open it. Instead, I called through the door. Jessica, it's 6 in the morning. Go home. You're trying to destroy my marriage. You're digging into my past, telling lies to Michael's co-workers. So she'd found out. How? Had someone tipped her off, or had she been monitoring everything more carefully than I'd realized? I don't know what you're talking about, I said calmly. Bullshit, she pounded harder. You think you can control Michael forever? You think you can keep him attached to your apron strings? He's my husband now. Mine. Lower your voice, or I'm calling the police. Call them. I'll tell them you're harassing me. I'll tell them you're stalking us. The door of my neighbor's house opened. Dan Kaufman, a retired police sergeant, stepped onto his porch. Everything okay, Margaret? Jessica whirled around. For a moment, she looked like a wild animal caught in headlights. Then her expression shifted, smoothed out, became almost pitiful. I'm sorry. I'm just upset. My mother-in-law canceled a check she'd promised us, and now we're in financial trouble. I shouldn't have come here like this. Dan looked at me. I shook my head slightly. A silent message. He understood. Maybe you should go home, Dan said to Jessica. Cool down? Jessica stared at him, then at my door. This isn't over, Margaret, she called. You have no idea what I'm capable of. She left, but I watched from my window as she sat in her car for 20 minutes, just staring at my house. When she finally drove away, I was shaking. Dan came over 10 minutes later. You want me to file a report? Not yet, but I'm documenting everything. I showed him the video from my doorbell camera. Can you keep a copy? Just in case? Of course. Margaret, whatever's going on, be careful. That woman looked dangerous. He wasn't exaggerating. Over the next 3 days, Jessica called me 17 times. I didn't answer. She left voicemails that ranged from sweet, Margaret, I'm so sorry, let's talk, to vicious, you're going to regret this, you manipulative bitch. She sent emails, text messages, even had flowers delivered with a card that read, some mothers need to learn when to let go. But the worst was when she went to Michael's boss. She told him I was harassing her, that I was mentally unstable, that Michael was worried about my behavior. She asked if the company could somehow intervene, maybe suggest counseling for me. Michael's boss, thankfully, knew me. I'd attended company events with Michael for years. He called Michael privately and asked what was going on. That conversation, Michael later told me, was the first crack in Jessica's facade. Because Michael had no idea Jessica had gone to his boss. He'd never authorized it. And when he confronted her about it, she'd said she was just trying to help him manage his difficult mother. That word. Manage. By the end of the week, Jessica stopped calling, stopped texting. The sudden silence was more frightening than the harassment. I took Patricia's advice and went to her beach house in Cannon Beach for 3 days. I needed distance, needed to clear my head and prepare for whatever was coming next. Because something was definitely coming. I returned from Cannon Beach on Thursday afternoon feeling more centered. The ocean had always helped me think clearly. Patricia had stayed with me, and we'd spent hours walking the beach, planning, strategizing. More importantly, I'd received a call from Michael, not Jessica, Michael himself. "Mom, can we meet?" Just the two of us. My heart had leaped. Of course. When? Tomorrow, lunch at Bamboo Sushi. Noon? I'll be there. But Friday morning brought an unexpected visitor. Jessica's mother, Diane Morrison, appeared on my doorstep at 10 a.m., dressed expensively, wearing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Margaret, may I come in?" This was the temptation Patricia had warned me about. "We can talk on the porch," I said. Diane's smile tightened, but she nodded. We sat in my wicker chairs, and she arranged herself carefully, as if posing for a photograph. "I came to apologize on behalf of my daughter," she began. "Jessica's been under tremendous stress. The wedding, the new marriage, the financial pressure you've created, the financial pressure I've created," I interrupted. "By canceling that check, yes. Margaret, I'm going to be direct. Jessica made a mistake at the reception. She drank too much, said things she didn't mean, but you've blown this entirely out of proportion." I said nothing. Let her talk. "I'm here to offer you a solution, a way for everyone to save face and move forward." She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "Jessica and Michael need $50,000 for their house down payment. I'm prepared to contribute $20,000. If you'd be willing to contribute $30,000, we can put this unfortunate incident behind us." "No," Diane blinked. "Excuse me? No, I'm not giving Jessica any money." "You mean you're not giving your son?" "I mean exactly what I said." I leaned forward. "Diane, did you know your daughter has been engaged 3 times? Did you know she has 2 restraining orders against her from former fiancés? Did you know about the expense account fraud investigations?" Diane's face went very still. "Those are lies, vicious lies from jealous people. They're public record. Would you like to see the documents?" For a long moment, we stared at each other. Then Diane's mask dropped completely. Her voice went cold. "You think you're protecting Michael. You're not. You're driving him away. Jessica is his wife. She's his future. You're his past. And if you continue this crusade, you'll lose him forever. Is that what you want?" "What I want," I said quietly, "is for my son to be safe. From predators, from manipulators, from people who see him as a resource to exploit." "You arrogant—" Diane caught herself, forced her features back into something resembling composure. "You're making a terrible mistake." "Then I'll live with it." She left without another word. I watched her car disappear down the street, and my hands were steady. No trembling. No doubt. Patricia had been right. They would try to tempt me with compromise, with partial surrender. But I wasn't surrendering anything. At noon, I met Michael at Bamboo Sushi. He was already there, sitting at a corner table, looking more like himself than he had in months. Something had changed in his expression. "Mom." He stood and hugged me. A real hug, long and tight. When we sat down, he looked exhausted but clear-eyed. "Thank you for meeting me," he said. "Always, honey, always." He ordered green tea for both of us, then sat in silence for a moment, choosing his words. "I've been doing some thinking and some research. Mom, why didn't you tell me about Jessica's past?" My chest tightened. "What did you find? The restraining orders, the broken engagements, the court judgment?" He rubbed his face. "I confronted her 2 days ago. She said you'd planted false information, paid people to lie, that you were trying to destroy our marriage." "And you believed her?" "At first, yes. But then I checked the court records myself. They're real, Mom. All of it." He looked at me, and there were tears in his eyes. Why didn't you tell me before the wedding? Would you have believed me? He was silent. Michael, you had to see it yourself. If I'd told you, she would have convinced you I was lying. She would have made herself the victim and me the villain. She tried that anyway, he said quietly. But I started noticing other things. The way she talks about you, the way she monitors my phone calls, my emails, the way she's been pushing me to change my will, to add her to my accounts. Mom, I think I made a terrible mistake. Relief washed through me. So strong I felt dizzy, but I kept my voice calm. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. But I need your help. I need to understand what I'm dealing with. And I need... He swallowed hard. I need my mother back. I reached across the table and took his hand. I never left, Michael. I was always right here. 3 days after my lunch with Michael, Jessica made her move. She called me Tuesday morning, her voice sweet as poisoned honey. Margaret, I think we've all been under too much stress. I'd like to come over and talk, clear the air. Just you and me, woman to woman. Every instinct screamed danger, but I also knew that refusing would look like I was the one avoiding reconciliation. When? I asked. This afternoon, around 2? Fine, 2 o'clock. I called Patricia immediately. She's coming. I need you here. Absolutely not. If I'm there, she'll claim you ganged up on her. But I'll be parked outside. Keep your phone in your pocket, on speaker. I'll record everything. At 1:55, a car pulled up. Not just Jessica. Jessica and her mother, Diane. Both of them, dressed in expensive casual wear, carrying what looked like a gift bag. This wasn't a reconciliation. This was an ambush. I opened the door before they knocked. Jessica, Diane, I wasn't expecting both of you. I hope you don't mind, Jessica said, all warmth and light. Mom wanted to come along. We thought it might help to have another perspective. They came in without waiting for an invitation. Jessica set the gift bag on my coffee table, a bottle of expensive wine and gourmet chocolates. The props for the performance they were about to give. Margaret, we want to start fresh, Jessica began, settling onto my couch like she owned it. I know we got off on the wrong foot. I take full responsibility for that. Do you? Absolutely. I was overwhelmed with the wedding and I said things I didn't mean. I hurt you, and I'm genuinely sorry. She looked at me with wide, earnest eyes. I want us to be family, real family. Don't you want that too? What I want, I said carefully, is honesty. Of course, Jessica leaned forward. That's why we're here, to be completely honest with each other. Diane nodded. Jessica's told me everything, about the stress, about the misunderstandings. Margaret, she loves Michael deeply. This isn't about money or control. It's about building a life together. Then tell me about your previous engagements, I said, looking directly at Jessica. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Jessica's smile froze. Those were mistakes, she said tightly. Relationships that didn't work out. Everyone has a past, Margaret. 2 restraining orders isn't just a past, it's a pattern. Diane stood up. How dare you bring that up? Those were lies told by vindictive men who couldn't handle strong women. Sit down, Diane. My voice was steel. I'm not finished. Something in my tone made her pause. She sat. I looked at Jessica. I know about the expense account fraud investigations. I know about the small claims judgment. I know you've targeted successful men before, gotten engaged, tried to access their money, and moved on when they figured out what you were doing. Michael is just your latest mark. Jessica's mask dropped. The sweet, apologetic daughter-in-law vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. Prove it, she said. Prove any of it in a way that Michael will believe. Because right now, Margaret, you look like a bitter, controlling mother who can't let go of her son. And that's exactly what I've been telling him. I've already shown him the court records, which I've explained were misunderstandings and false accusations. Jessica stood, moving closer to me. You think you're so smart. You think you've won because Michael had lunch with you. But he came home, Margaret. He came home to me. He's sleeping in my bed. He's wearing the wedding ring I put on his finger. And at the end of the day, I'm the one who has him. Jessica, Diane warned, but Jessica was beyond caution now. Her face was twisted with contempt. You want to know what Michael said last night? He said, maybe Mom is right about some things, but I can't abandon my wife. Do you understand what that means? It means even when he knows I'm flawed, even when he has doubts, he still chooses me. Because I'm his wife. Because I have legal rights now. Because I'm in his house, in his bed, in his bank accounts. You're in his bank accounts? I asked quietly. Jessica realized her mistake too late. Diane grabbed her arm. We should go. No. Jessica shook her off. I'm tired of playing nice. Here's the truth, Margaret. You have two choices. Either you give us the money, the full $80,000, and back off completely, or I make your son's life a living hell. I'll max out every credit card. I'll take loans in his name. I'll make sure that by the time I'm done, he's so financially destroyed, he'll have no choice but to stay with me. Because what kind of man leaves his wife when he's drowning in debt? What kind of man abandons the person he made vows to? You're threatening financial abuse, I said. I'm promising consequences. Give us the money, Margaret, or watch me destroy everything you've built for him. Your choice. You have 24 hours to decide. They left, slamming my door hard enough to rattle the frame. I stood in my living room, shaking. Not from fear, from rage, from the absolute certainty that this woman would do exactly what she'd threatened. Patricia came in through the back door 30 seconds later. Her face was pale. Tell me you got all of that, I said. Every word. Margaret, we need to take this to Michael right now. No. I took a deep breath, forcing calm. Not yet. If we play this wrong, she'll claim the recording is fake or edited. We need more. We need her to make a mistake so big that Michael can't deny it. What kind of mistake? I smiled, cold and certain. The kind that comes from arrogance. Jessica thinks she's won. She thinks she's untouchable. So we're going to let her think that for just a little longer. And when she makes her next move, we'll be ready. The fear was there, yes. But underneath it was something stronger. Determination. And the absolute will to protect my son, no matter what it cost me. The breaking point came faster than I expected. Jessica's 24-hour ultimatum ended at 2 p.m. Wednesday. At 2:15, I received a notification from my bank's fraud alert system. Someone had tried to access my accounts using forged authorization documents. The bank had flagged it immediately. I'd put additional security measures in place after Jessica's threats. Within an hour, I was in Robert Chen's office with bank security footage showing Jessica at a branch across town, presenting documents claiming she had power of attorney over my finances due to my declining mental health. She forged your signature, Robert said, examining the documents. This is identity theft. This is fraud. Margaret, this is a felony. Can we prove it was her, not someone else? We have her on camera. We have the forged documents. And he pulled up something on his computer. The bank employee she spoke with noted that she claimed to be your daughter-in-law, said you'd had a breakdown and needed family help managing your money. I felt ice cold. She's escalating. No, she's desperate. You didn't give her the money, so she tried to take it. Margaret, we need to call the police, now. Not yet, I need to tell Michael first. I called my son from Robert's office. Michael, I need you to come to Robert Chen's office right now. It's an emergency. Mom, I'm at work. Now, Michael, please, trust me. He arrived 45 minutes later, worried and confused. Jessica wasn't with him. I'd made sure to call during a time I knew she'd be at her job. When Robert showed him the security footage, Michael went white. That's Jessica at the bank, trying to steal from your mother using forged documents, Robert said quietly. I'm sorry, Michael. Michael watched the footage 3 times. I watched him break apart and rebuild himself with each viewing. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. I need to hear her explain this. Michael, no, Mom. I need to hear it from her. I need to give her a chance to tell me I'm misunderstanding what I'm seeing. We drove to Michael's apartment together. I sat in my car while he went upstairs alone. Through the walls, I could hear raised voices. Then silence. Then Michael appeared, holding his laptop, his face carved from stone. She's coming down, he said. I told her you were here. I told her we needed to talk. All 3 of us. Jessica emerged from the building, and the moment she saw me, her expression transformed from concerned wife to cornered predator. What is this? She demanded. Michael opened his laptop, turned it to face her. Explain this. The security footage played. Jessica watched herself on screen, watched herself handing over forged documents, watched herself claiming Margaret had had a breakdown. That's not what it looks like, she started. Really? Michael's voice was deadly quiet. Because it looks like you tried to steal from my mother using fake power of attorney documents. I was trying to help. Stop lying. The explosion came from Michael, not me. Just stop. I know about your previous engagements. I know about the restraining orders. I know about the fraud investigations at your jobs. I've spent the last week digging through public records, and I know everything, Jessica. She switched tactics instantly, tears filling her eyes. Baby, yes, I've made mistakes in the past, but I've changed. I love you. You have to believe. I spoke to Brian Hendricks yesterday, Michael continued, his voice like iron. Your previous fiancé, the one with the restraining order, he told me everything. How you isolated him from his family, how you spent $40,000 on his credit cards in 3 months, how you forged his signature on a loan application, how he lost his house because of you. He's lying. He's a bitter... I also spoke to David Chen, your other ex-fiancé. Same story, Jessica. Same pattern. Target successful men. Get them to propose. Isolate them from their families. Drain their finances. Move on when they catch you. Michael's hands were shaking. Was any of it real? Did you ever love me? Or was I just another mark? Jessica's face went through a remarkable transformation. The tears stopped. The pleading expression vanished. What replaced it was cold calculation. Does it matter? She asked. We're married, Michael. I have legal rights. You can't just throw me out. If you try to leave me, I'll take half of everything. I'll drag you through a divorce that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. You'll go to jail, I said, standing up from my car. For identity theft, forgery, and fraud. I'm filing charges. Today. Jessica turned on me, all pretense gone. You can't prove I knew those documents were forged. I'll say someone gave them to me. I'll say I thought they were real. We have the recording from my house, I said. You threatening me. You admitting you planned to financially abuse Michael. You confessing to getting access to his bank accounts under false pretenses. Her eyes widened. You recorded me? Every word. I pulled out my phone, played her voice. I'll max out every credit card. I'll take loans in his name. I'll make sure that by the time I'm done, he's so financially destroyed. Jessica lunged at me. Michael caught her, held her back. Get out, he said. Get your things and get out now. You can't get out! The roar came from somewhere deep inside my son. Get out before I call the police myself! Jessica stared at him, at me, her face twisted with rage and something like disbelief. She'd thought she was untouchable. She'd thought her manipulation was perfect. She'd been wrong. She left, but not before turning at her car and screaming across the parking lot. "This isn't over. You'll both regret this." But we'd already won, and she knew it. The police report was filed that afternoon. Detective Sarah Walsh took my statement, reviewed the security footage, examined the forged documents, and listened to the recording from my house. Her expression remained professional, but I saw anger flash in her eyes. "Mrs. Morgan, I want you to know we take financial elder abuse very seriously. Even though you're clearly capable of protecting yourself, the intent was there. She targeted you because of your age and your relationship to her husband. How long until she's arrested?" "We'll execute a warrant within 48 hours. I'd recommend your son stay somewhere else. These situations can become volatile." Michael moved into my house that night. He was quiet, broken, processing the implosion of his marriage. I made him his favorite dinner, pot roast, the same recipe I'd made throughout his childhood. And we ate in silence. "I'm sorry, Mom," he finally said. "You have nothing to apologize for. I chose her over you. I believed her lies. I let her isolate me from you for months." "Michael." I reached across the table, took his hand. "She's a professional. This is what she does. You're not the first man she's fooled, and you would have been just another victim if you hadn't been smart enough to question things." "I almost wasn't. If you hadn't canceled that check, if you hadn't fought back." He shook his head. "She would have destroyed me." Jessica was arrested Thursday morning at her job, a marketing firm she'd started at just 2 months before. The humiliation of being walked out in handcuffs was, Robert told me later, absolutely devastating to her carefully constructed image. She made bail by afternoon. Her mother posted the $50,000 bond. But the damage was done. The charges were serious: identity theft, forgery, attempted fraud. The district attorney added counts of domestic financial abuse. And when Brian Hendricks and David Chen heard about the arrest, they came forward with their own evidence, requesting the cases against her be reopened. Jessica tried to contact Michael repeatedly. Calls, texts, emails, all blocked. She showed up at my house twice. The second time, with police present, she was served with a restraining order. "This is your fault," she screamed at me from the street. "You destroyed my life. You turned him against me." "No, Jessica," I called back calmly. "You destroyed your own life. I just made sure you couldn't destroy my son's too." The divorce proceedings were swift. Michael filed for annulment based on fraud. Jessica had concealed her criminal history and her financial situation. When it came out that she'd been maxing out credit cards in Michael's name during their 3-month marriage, the judge was unsympathetic. Jessica tried to claim she deserved spousal support. The judge reviewed the evidence of her fraud pattern and denied it. She tried to claim she deserved half of Michael's assets. The judge pointed out that Oregon law doesn't favor people who enter marriage fraudulently. She tried to claim emotional distress. The judge had reviewed the recordings from my house and told her lawyer coldly that his client was lucky she wasn't facing additional charges. The annulment was granted. The marriage was legally erased as if it had never happened. Michael was free, but Jessica's nightmare was just beginning. Her employer fired her when the arrest became public. The marketing firm didn't want the liability of keeping someone with fraud charges on staff. Her apartment lease was terminated. She'd been late on rent for 2 months, using Michael's money to cover her expenses, and then pocketing it when he paid her back. Her mother, Diane, finally saw through the lies. I learned this from Patricia, who heard it from a mutual friend. Diane had discovered that Jessica had been stealing from her too, forging checks from her mother's accounts for months. The criminal trial was scheduled for 6 months out. The prosecutor was confident. "She's going to prison, Mrs. Morgan. Minimum 2 years, possibly 5 with all the charges." I felt no triumph in that, only relief, and sadness for the lives Jessica had damaged. Michael spent weeks rebuilding himself. He saw a therapist, reconnected with friends he'd abandoned during his relationship with Jessica, and slowly, painfully, learned to trust his own judgment again. And he came back to me. We resumed our Sunday morning coffee ritual. We talked about everything: his job, his healing, his future. He asked me once if I'd ever forgive myself for not stopping the wedding before it happened. I forgive myself for respecting your autonomy as an adult, I'd said. You had to make your own choices, even the wrong ones. My job wasn't to prevent you from marrying her. It was to be here when you needed help. You saved me, Mom. No, honey, you saved yourself. You were brave enough to look at the truth when it hurt. That's all you. 6 months later, Jessica was sentenced to 3 years in prison. She stood in the courtroom, no longer the confident manipulator, just a woman who'd finally been caught. She looked at me once before they led her away. I met her eyes and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Justice had been served. My son was safe. And I had won. 18 months after the annulment, I stood in my backyard, watching Michael laugh with a woman I'd met 3 months earlier. Her name was Rachel. She was a pediatric nurse. And when she'd learned about Jessica, she'd looked Michael in the eye and said, "I'm sorry that happened to you. If you want to talk about it, I'm here. If you don't, that's okay too." That was the moment I knew she was different. Rachel had met me for coffee. Not because Michael insisted, but because she'd asked to. "I want to get to know you," she'd said simply. "Michael loves you, and if we're going to be serious, I want to understand the people who matter to him." We'd talked for 3 hours that first day, about her work, about her family in Seattle, about her own past relationship that had ended badly. She was open, honest, emotionally mature. Everything Jessica had pretended to be. "I heard what happened with his ex-wife," Rachel had said carefully. "That must have been terrifying for you." "It was, but I'd do it again in a heartbeat." "I would too, if I had a child and someone was hurting them." She'd smiled. "For what it's worth, Margaret, Michael talks about you with such love and respect. You raised an incredible person. Some of us got lucky that Jessica showed her true colors before permanent damage was done. I'd liked her immediately. Now, watching Michael with Rachel at our family barbecue, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. My son was happy. Genuinely, peacefully happy. No walking on eggshells. No monitoring his words or actions to avoid triggering an argument. Just happiness. "She's good for him," Patricia said, coming to stand beside me. She'd been vindicated by everything that happened. Her instincts about Jessica had been right from the start. "She is, and he's good for her too." "Have you heard the latest about Jessica?" I had. It was impossible not to hear the updates through mutual acquaintances and public records. Jessica's life had completely collapsed. She'd served 18 months of her 3-year sentence before being released on parole. During her time in prison, she'd lost everything. Her mother had cut off all contact after discovering the full extent of Jessica's thefts. Diane had moved to Florida to escape the shame and had made it clear she wanted nothing to do with her daughter. Jessica's professional reputation was destroyed. A simple Google search of her name brought up articles about the fraud case, her arrest, her conviction. No reputable company would hire her. She'd tried to restart in a new city, Phoenix, according to one source, working minimum wage jobs and living in a studio apartment. She'd attempted to reach out to Michael twice through new email addresses, both times begging for money, claiming she'd changed, claiming she needed help. Michael had forwarded the emails to his lawyer and the police. Jessica was warned that any further contact would violate her parole and send her back to prison. She'd tried social media campaigns, posting sob stories about being a victim of a vindictive mother-in-law, claiming I'd fabricated evidence against her. But the court records were public. People could see the truth. Her posts got reported and removed repeatedly. Last I'd heard, she'd been fired from a retail job for stealing from the cash register. Old patterns never truly died. Brian Hendricks, her first victim, had called me once. "I wanted to thank you," he'd said, "for stopping her, for making sure she faced consequences. I tried to warn people about her, but no one listened. You didn't just save your son. You probably saved other men from being her next targets. That had meant more to me than I'd expected. My own life had flourished. My accounting firm had landed 3 major new clients. I'd been invited to speak at a women's business conference about protecting yourself and your family from financial predators. My story, without names, without specific details, had resonated with hundreds of women who'd faced similar situations. I'd also finally finished renovating my house, something I'd been putting off for years. New kitchen, new bathrooms, fresh paint throughout. I'd turned one bedroom into a craft room. I'd taken up watercolor painting, something I'd always wanted to try. Patricia and I had traveled to Ireland, fulfilling a dream we'd talked about for a decade. We'd walked the cliffs of Moher, drunk Guinness in Dublin pubs, traced our family's roots in County Cork. I was 72 years old and I'd never felt more alive. Michael was thriving too. He'd gotten a promotion at work, partly because he was no longer distracted by a toxic relationship. He'd bought a small house in Selwood, was fixing it up himself, taking pride in the work. Rachel was there most weekends, helping him paint, plant a garden, build the life Jessica had tried to steal from him. "Do you think he'll propose?" Patricia asked. "Eventually, when he's ready. But there's no rush. He's learned to take his time, to really know someone before making commitments." "You taught him that. Life taught him that. I just helped him survive the lesson." As the sun set over my backyard, my family around me, I felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years. Complete peace. Jessica was someone else's problem now, probably her parole officers. Michael was safe, happy, and building a real future with a woman who deserved him. And I was exactly where I belonged. Sometimes protecting the people you love means going to war, and sometimes you win. So what did I learn from this nightmare? That trust is precious, but verification is essential. That love means protecting people from their own blind spots. That sometimes the kindest thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's manipulation. If you see someone you love being isolated, controlled, exploited, don't be silent. Don't worry about being the difficult mother-in-law or friend or sibling. Your job is to love them, not to be liked. And to anyone who's ever been in my position, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, investigate. You're not being paranoid. You're being protective. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have fought back, or would you have given in to keep the peace? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read everyone. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes, we all need a reminder that we don't have to accept abuse just because it comes wrapped in family ties. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps someone out there find the courage to protect themselves or someone they love. Remember, you're never too old to fight for what matters, and some battles are worth every scar they leave behind.